Good morning, everyone. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Oh, isn't that nice? You guys are so nice. Just before we begin, in case you're not familiar with the Martin Institute, it's an awesome place, and of course, I'm incredibly biased. I love all of our local universities, but I have a special place in my heart for Stonehill because they allowed me to be a student many moons ago. And they still acknowledge it, even though I think it's probably kind of costing them some reputation points every time they mention my name as an alumnus of this great organization. But there are restrooms toward this side of the room, out of the hallway. If you go slightly down the hall toward the, I guess what is the front of the building, or the part of the campus that's inside, and there are restrooms in case you're looking. And there's water on the table, please partake of that. Just really, really happy that you're all here. For those of you who don't know, my name is Dennis Carmen, and I am the President and CEO of the United Way of Greater Plymouth County. I am going to be celebrating my 11th anniversary come March, so I'm very excited. So this will be technically my 11th allocations process. So we're happy you're here. I want to acknowledge some folks beyond the fact that you're all here looking for information about how this year's allocation process will roll out. I want you to be aware that you have a number of allocation volunteers in your presence who are here as well learning. We are ecstatic this year that so far we have 54 allocation panelists. Would the allocation folks raise their hand? Volunteers, we've got a couple of them are here. Really want to thank them for being here and thank all of the allocation volunteers because it is an incredibly difficult task. They dedicate a lot of their time and energy into reading the applications that you're going to be completing and actually doing site visits. So you will see a handful of them coming out to your sites and then making recommendations as to what they think are the best programs. And to be honest with you, and I've said this many a time, it is unusual for an application to come to the United Way that is not totally worthy and totally worth funding. It is always a question of trying to sort through really great applications to come up with the best of the best. And we wish we had an unlimited amount of money because really all of what you're looking to do should be funded. There's no question about that. There's just a rare occasion that someone hasn't met some of the criteria or someone hasn't understood, or organization hasn't completely understood how the process works. I'm going to say this because it's a thread that I'm going to pick up on later, but I lost my cowboy hat. Okay, I want you to just remember that. I know it doesn't make sense. It's a non sequitur right now, but I'll come back to that. I lost my cowboy hat. Okay. That said, I think we're going to begin, and I am going to surprisingly break all the rules of presenting and read a lot of what's going to be presented on my slides. And really that's done for your benefit, because if I don't do that, I will talk a lot more than I should. And the real hero of our stage, very often in my view of the allocation process, is my friend and colleague, Kim Allen, who is our Director of Community Relations and Marketing. Kim, would you kind of wave at them? She's in the back there. And Kim is one of those most organized and energetic and friendly people that I've ever met. So if you haven't met her, please take a few minutes at some point this morning and introduce yourself. Kim really, she's the organizing force behind all of what we do in the allocation process. She's done a fantastic job. And I might add, she is actually one of those good people who are the alumni from Stonehill that they actually brag about more than some of us. So we're really thrilled to have her. I also have, and I think at least 2 board members who are here. Could you raise your hands too? Because very often missed, and all of your organizations typically have boards of directors who are volunteers who give up of their time and their talents in order to make things work at the United Way, and we are ecstatic to have them in our midst. So very, very thankful that we have a strong board of directors. We are actually up to 20 members right now, which is a terrific increase for the last few years. And every one of them brings special talents to the United Way of Greater Plymouth County. So, again, thank you for being here. Some of you might be familiar with the name Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Are you not? Do you remember On Death and Dying? It was a terrific book, and there were 5 stages of how you deal with loss. And I always forget most of them. I remember the anger one, and I remember the denial one, and then I remember the acceptance one. But the other stages I always forget are the bargaining stage that some of us all go through, or the depression stage. But, you know, incredibly important work about how we deal with tragic loss, and that we go through those stages in different ways. But interestingly enough, I ran across a quote from her that I wanted to share with you, and again, I will be reading this verbatim. Incidentally, all of these slides are going to be available. You do not have to be taking copious notes. We make them available electronically for you, so you don't have to do that. But she said, "The most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen." I know from my experience in the human services over the years, whether it was in the substance abuse field or the homeless field, or the areas that my background comes from before I got to United Way, I know that you don't get into the work that you're doing without having experienced or touching a lot of really challenging, difficult times, and that those difficult times have led to you making decisions to be committed to helping others. I have absolutely no doubt of that. And I think this quote not only captures you, but it captures the people that we're trying to help, because they also have been through some very challenging, difficult, tough times, and our tasks are often to help them out of the depths and to help them get to where they need to be. And you are all, again, should be congratulated for that work that you do every single day. For those of you who don't know, United Way, the mission is to unite people, ideas, and resources to improve the lives of people in Greater Plymouth County. United Way of Greater Plymouth County aims to direct resources to the most vulnerable, lowest income population in our community. Therefore, we support programs that promote the education of our youth, the physical health and healthy lifestyles of our most vulnerable neighbors, and the financial stability of our family. I want to point out that we often in the past have highlighted the areas of education, health, and income. Most United Ways have substituted that phrase income, that word income, with financial stability, because as you know, we nor you have the resources to supply income, thinking that throwing money into a situation is the only way it's going to be resolved. And very often what we talk about when we're talking about addressing the needs of people who are challenged economically are sometimes things like financial literacy and surrounding people with services and supports so that whatever income they need to be able to sustain themselves is something that's going to bring them up out of their situation. So we talk about financial stability, not just income. Sometimes people misunderstand that. So the three areas again, health, education, health, and financial stability. And we can talk very clearly. We have broad definitions of these areas. You know, you've worked with us before. We try to make sure that they're inclusive. So education is helping our children through early learning opportunities to be ready for school, helping our youth to be successful in school and safe through after-school initiatives, vocational opportunities, and mentoring in order to ensure their graduation from high school and success in higher education and gainful employment. Similarly, our health is a fairly broad definition, promoting the physical health, wellness, and healthy living of our neighbors through access to health care, dental and preventative services. Treatment interventions are aimed at providing services to our elderly, as well as to reducing child abuse, mental illness, substance addictions, and domestic violence. Again, you guys are such a great representation of all of that. And lastly, as I mentioned before, we changed the title of this to financial stability, but the same definition we've had for income is providing for the basic needs of food, shelter, clothing for our families and for our most vulnerable neighbors, as well as affording pathways for them to financial literacy, sustainable employment, decent, affordable housing. So those are the basic areas that we're trying to look for funds in. What I should note is that what we try to do at United Way every several years is to try to do a needs assessment, and sometimes that involves surveying some of our community partners over the years. At times it involves focus groups. At times it involves actually direct surveying of people who are receiving services. Last 3 years ago almost now, we were fortunate enough to have worked with Bridgewater State University in order to do such a study, not only for our area, but the other 4 United Ways in southeastern Massachusetts had their individual reports, and then there was a report that encompassed all of southeastern Massachusetts. And so again, it's available still on our website to provide some guidance to what are those most pressing needs in those basic areas of education, health, and financial stability. So if you're looking, you can easily find it on our website. One of the things that we point to when we talk about the United Way process, did I do this correctly? Okay. There are a couple changes or anticipated changes to the process. They're not major changes. We have left the process fairly similar, so if you have applied before, you're going to be very familiar with it. There's minor things that we're looking at, and one of them is with input from our Community Impact Committee, which is a subcommittee of our board. We will likely be revising our United Way funded partner agencies' survey of success year-end reporting requirements. And basically, I don't want you to be worried about it. We're trying to make it more useful so that the information we get from you around what some of the outcomes are, what some of the testimonies are of people who have experienced going through your services through United Way funded initiatives, that we are able to kind of mine that information a little bit easier in order to be able to use it to raise or generate some more income. And similarly, we welcome partner agency testimonials and success stories year-round, and would love to promote these stories as part of our United Way Community Partners in Action social media campaign. Please do not hesitate to share. Most of you, if you've provided and been involved with United Way, know by now that we do have a Facebook page. It's fairly active. We love to show pictures of where the United Way dollars are getting used and to see some of the programs and to highlight it. There's always been that challenge with United Way funded partners about does United Way kind of stand front and center? Do the programs that we're supporting kind of take a back seat? And we've discovered that it doesn't work well if that's the case. That our strength at United Way really kind of results from all of the good work that you're doing. And if we can't promote it, then it's very difficult for us to raise additional dollars in order to fund those initiatives. So please keep the testimony and the pictures and the stories coming of all the good things that are happening. We try our best to promote any of the items, any of the times that you folks are doing not only service projects and initiatives, but anytime you might be doing events that you're trying to attract more people to. We understand completely that no one source of money is going to do everything, and so you have to do your own resource development. We appreciate that, and we want to try to be supportive of those activities as well. So we have an agency agreement, which this document, probably more than most anything else that we do, has changed over the years. It's not changing much this year, actually at all this year, but it has changed. And for some of you who are used to the traditional United Way model, the one thing that often kept agencies from applying for United Way funds is what we used to call the blackout period. It even sounds like a terrible thing these days, but it was the idea that when United Way was doing its fundraising, and most of its fundraising is done through employee payroll deduction campaigns, would be to say to agencies from September 1st through December 1st, you weren't able to raise dollars. It almost sounds laughable these days to be able to suggest to you that you couldn't be fundraising during that period of time. It was intended to allow United Way to have opportunity to promote its message to area businesses. But again, quite frankly, you've got events that you have to run. And so we were often providing so many exceptions to that rule because people needed to do an event in the middle of October or November, and you do solicitations just before the holidays. Really unreasonable for United Way to have that kind of a blackout period. So that was taken away a number of years ago. So if you're still harboring those kind of old ideas about United Way, we recognize that you absolutely have to do your own fund development as well. And this is just a basic statement. United Way has partnership compliance, co-branding, and fundraising standards and policies intended to both provide mutual marketing benefits and fully support the annual fundraising campaign. Please be sure to review the revised agreement. United Way will monitor for compliance, and it was revised in 2015. And when you're doing it, Kim will talk in more detail about this, but the United Way process is a two-step process. You apply to sections A and B, which is mostly your legal documentation and your financials and of your organization. The second application is more the specifics of the initiatives that you're applying for funding for, your program budgets and those kind of things. So it's a two-step process, and she'll explain it in much more detail. Continuing, these are important components of the compliance to the agency agreement. And when we say co-branding, we really want to co-brand with you. You have very strong, reputable organizations with terrific logos, with terrific staff and initiatives and programs that you run well beyond what United Way is funding you for. So our hope and desire, and what we're looking for, is co-branding requirements that mean signage, logo usage, website, United Way accounting, we provide window decals, signs, and electronic logos. We are hoping that you can utilize them in letterhead, in your annual reports, in your brochures. We understand that it won't be appropriate for every document that you have, that there are some reports that are not going to be possible because, and we have this too, someone says, well, if I put United Way's logo in the middle of this report, I got to put everybody's, and I can't do that, I can't fit them. We get that. What we're looking for here is compliance as much as you can in order to, again, co-brand so that the United Way logo gets a significant amount of exposure so that when we're trying to raise money, people will recognize the logo and be aware of it. So be mindful of that. Reporting requirements, year-end reports, as I mentioned earlier, success stories and outcomes are always important to the work that we're doing. Partner events and activities requirement. The agency executives meetings, that's usually the heads or the designees or organizations meet. Now we did reduce the number of meetings to quarterly meetings, but there are also events that we get involved in as United Way, and we're hoping that you have strong active engagement in. For example, there is a legislative breakfast coming up on the 27th of January that we're involved with the Community Services of Greater Brockton and the Greater Plymouth Area Human Services Council. And we do that because we don't want to inundate our legislators with 15 bazillion different legislative breakfasts. So we have this one, and United Way partners with those other two coalitions, and it is a terrific event to go to. It's a very worthwhile event in that there's a lot of networking opportunities, not only with our local area representatives, but we usually have a terrific keynote speaker. This year it happens to be the president of Bridgewater State College, Fred Clark, and there's also going to be an update from the legislative policy person at the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, a Ms. Rebecca Brink. So it's going to be a good time. Going to be at the Halifax Country Club. If you're looking for information, actually there's a number of people in the room who are connected to all those coalitions, and they can help you with that. The last thing, employee campaign and fundraising requirements. We're looking for we actively solicitate employees, and if possible, complete prior to community-wide campaign kickoff. All campaigns must be complete by the third Friday in November. It doesn't make sense if we're going to try to fund initiatives in the area if the organizations themselves aren't involved in a United Way campaign. So we recognize that when we talk to a nonprofit organization, that you have a lot of staff that are not making tons of money. That's one of those kind of duh statements. We know that you're not being paid what you're worth, and the bottom line to it is when you're asked to contribute all of your time and energies to a nonprofit organization, it may be tough to envision the idea that you might want to make a contribution to United Way. So what we ask is that you run an active United Way campaign. Don't make a decision for your staffs. Let them be the ones to decide. And I do have to say that there are some organizations in this room that are incredibly supportive, run wildly successful United Way campaigns, and they matter. Every dollar that comes into United Way absolutely matters. So the requirement that you run a campaign, we hope, is not looked at as a hollow gesture. We think it makes perfect sense that you would do that. We actually have a number of nonprofits who don't receive funding and yet run a United Way campaign, and they add to, hopefully, the dollars that are local and stay local in this community. So by all means, we want you to continue to do that. At this point, I have some key tips that I want to go through. And again, these are common sense to the ones who already applied to this. But the idea of initiatives seeking United Way funds must be focused on services and activities that have clear and measurable outcomes. Measuring outcomes increases the effectiveness of your work to improve lives, communicates the value of your work to the community, and helps the United Way to raise additional resources. Make outcomes clear, brief, and direct. There's often a lot of steps to getting, for example, a student to graduate who is having some difficulty. But along the path, we need to set really clear outcomes of what we're expecting from the initiatives that we're going to be providing some funding for. And it helps us, it helps you, and it helps us to be clear about that, so that people, in our case, when we're going to the corporate world, small and large businesses, they're often talking in terms of, what's my return on investment? And I know that might sound a little cold, but the reality is, even when they ask it that way, the return on their investment is improving lives. We just need to get very clear about what you're doing in your endeavors, whether you're talking about health or education or financial stability. If you can be clear on, here's how we're coming up with successful outcomes, we're able to raise money a lot better. It's a lot easier for us to convince the folks who are running employee campaigns and who are donating large amounts of money to United Way. When they can see it, when they can feel it, when they can touch it, it matters. So outcomes are really, really important. And I recognize that we struggle sometimes with, what do you mean by outcomes? And there's a whole lot of literature about it. I still think to this day there are a lot of fine organizations dedicated to research that are still referring to our efforts, saying, well, this is how many hours I put in, this is how many classes we run. Well, those are good things to do, and they're great activities, but they're not outcomes. What's the outcome? The outcome are people who not only graduate, but who are ready to be leaders in the community. Most of you who are doing that kind of work know exactly what I'm talking about. You're developing people who will be not self-sufficient. I get on a soapbox every once in a while. You see what I mean by this staying with the notes thing? Self-sufficiency sounds terrific, except when I ask people, are you totally self-sufficient? I don't know about what your answer is, but mine is absolutely not. Left to my own designs, I would be a disaster. I have friends and family, I have colleagues who are there. So what I think we often strive for is interdependency. That people can function productively in a community, that they're a part of that community, and that they can establish ways to be successful. And again, so many of you here know what I'm talking about because this is what you do. You help people get to those next levels. You help them to become interdependent, know where to get help when they need it. We're all going to need help. The key is, do we know where to get it and how to get it, and then how to use it in our favor in order to get us into a better place where we can be great individuals, not only for ourselves, but we can be contributing members of the society, which means we turn around and help the next person as well. So there's a lot of good work that gets done. So outcomes is incredibly important. In addition, these papers aren't separated now. I can't multitask. I come to know this. The process is clearly volunteer-driven. And as I mentioned, we've got volunteers at the heart of it. And make sure when you're doing your application that you do not assume that the volunteers know about your initiative or the need area you are addressing. Over the years, we've heard some criticisms from some of the agencies, constructive, that it would be nice if they were the same volunteers who came out to review our program year after year. There are some downsides with that. One is you tend to have people who are limited and don't know all the other services that are out there. They may know you and your programs and you wouldn't have to explain it. But the challenge is, for us, we get a different set of volunteers. We have some of them returning every year, but we often get new ones. And there is a benefit, I think, to making sure that you treat anybody who's going to support your program as not knowing anything about your program. Give them everything so that they appreciate the length and breadth of it, what it does, who's involved, who your partners are. Really, really do not assume they know. Encourage them to communicate any and all questions that they may have particularly about any inconsistencies between the narrative presentation and the site visit. Points are often lost when these inconsistencies arise and are not explored or explained. We have often had people, and our volunteers are wonderful people, they are not great poker players. They will come out and they will love everything you do because they're volunteering, they care about the community, they want to see you be successful, they would fund everything if we had unlimited dollars. But very often it masks, sometimes they might come out and not see something in the report that they expected to see. What I encourage you to do is to make sure that they understand what's going on. You don't want them walking away not asking a question. Now, you can't be 100% sure of that. I just think it's important to always ask the volunteers. Have we explained everything? Is there anything any questions that you would have? Make sure that they're given that opportunity, because once in a while, a question gets asked, and most of the time, you can answer it to their satisfaction. And they don't walk away with this disconnect. They don't walk away doubting something that your program is doing. They walk away with a question that needed to be asked and needed to be answered. It really was sad in rare instances where someone would say, if they had only asked us the question, we could have explained that. There was a difference of staffing. It was a difference of a partner. You might have switched out a partner. Whatever it is, just make sure that they understood your narrative, that they are comfortable with it, that after the site visit happens, that you go back and say, hey, everything okay? Did this make sense? Did this match what you saw? Did you see everything in our proposal here on the site? Because that's really, really important. And I'm just saying from past experience, do not leave questions unasked. Though the scoring rubric is, there is a scoring rubric utilized, the allocations process is not an exact science. And other considerations, including geographic spread of funded initiatives, funding balance among the need areas, and per client cost for services are made by our volunteer board of directors. The process therefore involves some subjective elements. United Way does not disclose the specific scoring with applicants. And the reason for that is twofold. One, we're protecting our volunteers. They're volunteers. We do our best, we train them, they work with people who've done this process for a while, but we don't want them being the cause of criticism from organizations that may not get funding or score as well as they should, so we really don't get into the legalistic battle. Now that said, we have always been open to talking with organizations that didn't receive funding about ways they might improve certain areas of their practice, and we've done that regularly, and very often had organizations make the changes that we were suggesting, and then they score much better and they're able to be funded again. But we just want to make it clear that we try to make it organized, we try to make it as fair as it can be, but there are going to be sometimes other considerations that we have to deal with. Limited dollars are always going to determine to some degree that we can't fund everybody, and we have to make some tough decisions. We also have to deal with our geography. We cover a fairly significant geography in greater Plymouth County. It means Brockton, the city of 95,000 plus. It means the town of Plymouth, which is 60,000 plus, and a lot of towns in between, some of them that have services and some of them that quite frankly don't. So there's always those challenges. We just want you to be aware of the process. It has a degree of subjectivity. We try to minimize that by having teams of 3 or 4 people reviewing each proposal and coming out and doing site visits. So we try to make it a very reasonable process. But like I said, it's not wholly mechanical, and we don't want to get into legalistic battles about that. And so that, believe it or not, leads us to, I think, I have one more? Oh, I do. I'm sorry. I have one more. I knew I had one more. Please consider these additional key points and tips that very often resonate with our volunteer allocation panelists and board of directors. Local delivery of services and the local access of key decision makers in an organization matter to our volunteers. They need to understand that the services, the impact is going to be in the communities that they're in. Targeted need means that United Way resources are to be directed to 15% of the local population of 500,000 or so, or 75,000 of those who are of low income. And lastly, the problems in our communities cannot be solved by any one organization, so create and emphasize strong and diverse partnerships. None of us can do it alone. The fact that United Way is at all successful depends on our community partners. My guess is your success depends on your networking with other community partners who are relevant to what you do, your mission statement. So by all means, keep things, partner and do the things that are in partnership and emphasize them. Make sure there's evidence of them at your, not only in your narrative, but also at your site visit. Now, sadly, we get to, I lost my cowboy hat. Okay. What does that have to do with anything? Well, I'm sorry I lost my cowboy hat because it was one of my favorite things. But I lost it, not exactly lost it. My wife borrowed it. And my wife actually is the rider of horses in her family. I do get on the horses, but and haven't fallen yet, but I'm not the rider. Well, when she rides, she goes in parades. And hopefully this doesn't come across as at all sexist, but she put fancy doodads on my cowboy hat so that I have like flowers and shamrocks and really things that don't belong, in my view, on cowboy hats. So I ultimately lost my cowboy hat and don't have it. And the reason that's sad is I want to share with you an interesting song that comes from, most of you may, any country music fans out there? Oh, a few, okay. Hopefully you'll stay that way after this. You might not. Might be a long process. But there was a Song of the Year from the Country Music Awards that Tim McGraw performed. Some of you may have recognized a song called Humble and Kind. You remember that? You heard that, right? Really an awesome song. What you may not know is that it was written by a woman who lives in Stoughton, Massachusetts. And she wrote it about her husband and her 5 kids. Can you imagine being a writer, singer, and have 5 kids and have to manage all? I'm sorry, women are my heroes. I'm sorry for the guys in the audience. Women are my heroes because they do everything they have to do, and they do most of what we have to do because we don't do it well. But Lori McKenna, if you really want to go chase it down, she does a great version of this song as well. But what I want you to do, it's a kind of everything she wanted her husband and kids to know. And so it's a terrific song, and I'm going to give it a rendition, but you have to participate. You have to, when the parts come around, when I say the word stay, you have to help me sing humble and kind. You can even say that, humble and kind. Humble and kind. Anwar, right? 3 words, right? So the song goes something like this. It won't sound like Tim McGraw. It might even sound more like Lori McKenna, actually. There's a light that glows on the front porch. Don't forget the keys under the mat. Let your childhood stars shine, but always stay humble and kind. You're going to have to work on this. Go to church 'cause your mama says to. Visit Grandpa every chance that you can. It won't be wasted time. Always stay humble and kind. Hold the door, say please, say thank you. Don't steal, don't cheat, and don't lie. I know you've got mountains to climb. bitterness keeps you from flying, but always stay humble. That's really getting better. That really is it. Now I gotta remember where I was. You know, see what happens when you're so good. That's a good thing. Okay, then it goes. Know the difference between sleeping with someone and sleeping with someone you love. I love you ain't no pickup line. Always hold the door, say please, say thank you. Don't steal and don't cheat and don't lie. I know you got mountains to climb, but always stay humble and kind. You're losing it, come on, need some more coffee there. When the dreams you're dreaming come to you, when the work you put in is realized, let yourself feel the pride, but always stay humble and kind. Yeah, all right. When it's warm, eat a root beer popsicle, shut off the AC and roll the window down. Let the summer sun shine, but always stay humble and kind. Don't take for granted the love this life gives you. And when you get to where you're going, don't forget to turn back around. Help the next one in line. Always stay humble and kind. Very nice. I'm taking you on the road. Taking you on the road. Keep in mind, you know, that those are some of the important things in our lives. It's important for us to treat each other that way through any kind of a process, as bureaucratic as our world gets, as contentious as our world gets. We have many challenges, but I'm very optimistic about our world. I have always been an optimist. I always believe that you do the right things, you work with people, you admit your mistakes, you move on, you do the best you can do, and good things will happen to you. At this point, it is my absolute pleasure, and your pleasure too, I'm sure. I'm actually going to put my hat on and get out of here and turn it over to my friend and colleague Kim Allen to go through some of the details of the process.
Good morning, everyone. Everyone hear me okay? I'm not used to speaking on a microphone, so I step away and let me know. So I'm going to walk through the calendar for the allocation process and then some of the logistics of the forms and stuff for the RFP form. So again, all of these slides will be on our website, so don't feel like you have to take a lot of notes. And I will not sing, so I'm going to enjoy Dennis's performance this morning. So without further ado. So this is the calendar. The two dates highlighted in red here are the deadlines for forms A and B and C and D. As Dennis mentioned, we have a two-part process. So A and B are going to be due on Friday, February 10th, by 4 p.m., either mailed or delivered to our United Way office in Brockton or on West Chestnut Street. And then in between that time before C and D is due, our volunteer audit committee will review the financials that are submitted by our agencies. 2 weeks later, on the 24th of February, we'll have C and D forms due back to our office. Same deal as the Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. And then our awesome allocations panelists will meet on March 14th. They will get their team assignments and the initiatives for review. And then the last thing on the bottom of the slide I wanted to point out because I think it could be slightly confusing. So, starting last year, we set a window for scheduling site visits. Now obviously we're not saying we're going to squeeze in all the visits in this ended period. But we're hoping that the team captains from the allocations panel will call the agency contacts, and we have a specific agency site visit information which they'll talk about in a bit, just to get, the visit on the books for both the agencies and for the panelists. So, if you wanted to have a board member present or a service recipient or that kind of thing, you'll know when they'll be visiting. And then pretty much from that day forward, from March 14th through the end of April, our panelists will be going out reviewing Form C and D and doing the site visits. Scoring should be due back to us on May 2nd. Our Community Impact Committee will review those scores and make recommendations to our Board of Directors. And then on May 17th, the Board will vote on the allocations. And then we try to get the allocations letters out right around mid-June or so. So now I'm going to go through all 4 of the forms. Bear with me, there's kind of a lot of detail in here, but I think it's helpful to even pull these slides out when you're actually filling out the forms. You can kind of look at the tips and look at the bullet points there. So first up is Form A. This one is just a one-pager, fairly simple, and this is for the organization. So no matter how many initiatives you guys submit when we get to Form C and D, we only need one version of Form A submitted for the organization. It goes through things like, your name, your address, your website, your mission statement, a few other quick questions on the bottom. Form B, just like Form A, we only need one copy submitted regardless of how many initiatives you were planning to apply for. And it's what we call our eligibility checklist. So I typed out here all of the different things that we'll be asking for, and I'll read through them quickly just so you have the overview. So we'll look for your 501c3 status, your DUNS number, or a statement that you do not have a DUNS number, your board of director information, and some board minutes from the last 6 board meetings. Either your most recent annual certified audit and financial statements, and your annual report, your IRS Form 990, and then the organization's budget overall. When we get to the end of C&D, you'll see that there's another budget just for the initiative, but this is for the total organization. And then the last 3 here are all forms that you're going to find up on our website when you're downloading the RFP forms that have been provided by us for you to download. So, first one is a signed copy of the USA Patriot Act certification form. Then we'll have the partner agency compliance agreement that Dennis walked us through, and the agency site visit information sheet. On this one I wanted to point out, so again, this was new last year to help making the site visit schedules hopefully a little bit easier. Ask for basic information on the contact of the agency, the address, any specific parking instructions, and then maybe the best time to see the program. So ideally, if you have a program that can be seen by the panelists, so like if you schedule when it's in action, meaning say you have an after school program, you want to schedule the time that maybe the panelists can check it out when the students are there during the program. So on Form B, you're just checking off that, yes, I understand, I can fill this out. But you're going to actually submit this information sheet with C and D because each one goes along with the initiative. That makes sense, hopefully. Okay, so Form C is the second part, again, due on February 24th with Form D, that goes through really the meat of the initiative itself. So at United Way, we are funding our partner agencies, but we're funding specific initiatives. So at the top here, we have listed the 3 focus areas that Dennis walked us through, and you can submit up to 3 applications per focus area. So that means, 3 for education, 3 for health, and 3 for financial stability. Maximum of 9 total. You're going to put down, how much you're asking for, the type of strategy that you're applying for, whether it's a systemic change or direct service, helping out individuals and families. And then choose which one of the 3 focus areas this initiative applies to. And then this kind of goes through the slide, specifically how we like Form C filled out. So there are allotted spaces linked to the 8-page document total for each question. And there's 5 categories that we ask you to answer, and then the site visit. So please keep your responses in those allotted boxes, and we ask that whenever possible, you use bullet point format. This makes it easier, hopefully, for you folks filling it out, but also helpful for our agencies and our panelists when they're out reviewing them too, so that when they're reading through Form C and D, it's as easy to understand as possible. And in red here, I note that if you could please give us the original copy of C and D, but also 4 additional copies, again, for our panelists that will be on much review. So, that's not it. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. So, first part of Form C is the partnership compliance. And if you were previously funded by our United Way, we will score your compliance over the last year. So you can just either write, are you a funded partner, or just leave this box blank. If you're new, we ask that you briefly outline your plans to comply with the agreement. So your marketing plans, your branding plans, that sort of thing. Second part is the target population. So who are you intending to serve with this initiative? Things like age, gender, race, and disabilities, and then any unique characteristics as well, any risk factors, and other things that would be helpful for our panels to know. Experience and strategies, part 3, halfway there. You're going to describe your specific strategy to meet the new area chosen. Explain how it aligns with your mission statement, your strategic goals. You're going to cite any research or evidence-based practices that support the proposed strategies to achieve chosen outcomes. And here you'll see in bold, if you were funded this current year, we ask that you please summarize your most recent outcomes and accomplishments, just briefly. Part 4 kind of goes back to what we were speaking about earlier with partnerships and collaboration. We think that partnerships are extremely important. We ask that if your initiative has, established partners, you just please list them on this page in this little checkbox that will say, yes, this is a collaborative proposal. And then part 5 is when we get to those outcomes that Dennis had mentioned. So we ask that here you list at least one, there can be several, quantifiable, measurable outcomes that you'll be meeting with this initiative. And then when you get the year-end reports in August at the end of the funding cycle, we'll ask you to kind of review how it went, what were your successes, what were your challenges, specifically who did you serve. And then the last part will be your site visit. So the site visits are really intended to be a fairly brief visit for a panelist to come to your agency and actually witness the consistency in what you wrote on Form C and what's going on with the agency. Again, those will be scheduled from March 14th to the 24th, and they'll actually perform, the panelists will be at your agencies from March 15th to May 2nd. And here's what you will be really scored on when you're coming up with the site visits. So your on-site and your off-site programming, things like, the facility itself, is it safe? And, is everyone comfortable there? Staffing, are the staff engaged? Is there an adequate staff-to-client ratio? Evidence of collaboration, if you listed that it was a collaborative proposal. Evidence of your population served. And then, obviously, if you're a new partner, you won't have these signs, but if you're not, you should look familiar to you, the window decal and the sign here. And we ask that, hopefully those are up and you're kind of showing the branding where you can, whether it's in the program space where the initiative is funded or on the door at the agency. And then the last form is Form D, which is the initiative budget. Different than the total organizational budget. Form D is just initiative specific. So all the figures, all the revenues and expenses should be related just to your initiative. And we found in the past that sometimes they don't balance out. So we ask that please have the revenues equal the expenses, and if they do not, just explain to us why that is. That's very helpful for our panelists to kind of know what your logic was behind that, and they might ask for them on the site visit. And the year-end report, again, that one that comes out at the end of the funding cycle, will include a request for the actual initiative's revenues and expenses. And yeah, that's about it. So how do you get to these forms? So right now, I just put them off last night. They're right on our website. So either go to our homepage at uwgpc.org, United Way of Greater Plymouth County, and you'll see the funding link on the far right. Or if you just put the / in, funding, you'll get right to the page. And what it is all Word documents, so you can download them and fill them out, and Form D is an Excel spreadsheet. And you'll see those other 3 forms that I mentioned with the Patriot Act and the Partner Agency Compliance form. And that's all. I may have gone through that quickly, so we'll have plenty of time for questions, but we always want to end with a thank you. Thank you all for all the wonderful, tireless work you do each and every day to serve our community.